Welcome to Lipstick, Laughs and Leadership, the podcast where we talk real leadership without the corporate BS.
We're Jodie and Emma, and this is a space for honest, human conversations about confidence, influence, well-being, and what it really takes to lead in today's world.
This podcast is for women who are capable, ambitious and thoughtful, but who might sometimes feel tired, stretched, or quietly question whether there's another way to do leadership.
There's no jargon here, no rigid rules, and certainly no pretending. Just lived experience, straight talk, laughter, and leadership that actually feels good on the inside.
So grab a cuppa, get yourself comfortable,
and welcome to the sofa.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Lipstick, Laughs and Leadership. And this is a special recording today, a special podcast episode. Not only are we not on the sofa, are we, Emma? I'm in my house. Emma's in hers.
Virtual today.
First virtual podcast. But we thought today, given that it is International Women's Day, we would record a very special episode. So one that's just a little bit out of the normal sequence of series, but dedicated to this year's International Women's Day, didn't we, Emma? As two women doing a podcast for women, it seemed very apt.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense, doesn't it, to do one? So, yeah, like you said, we're not on the sofa, but we are at home, chilling out and coming to you in the same formats in terms of podcasting on YouTube. But yeah, like Jodie said, we just wanted to do this extra special one to represent International Women's Day because it makes sense. But we do hope that you are enjoying our podcast so far. Thank you for those of you that have sent us messages and commented and said that you're enjoying the podcast. So thank you for that. And we've got many more to come, haven't we? But for now,
there's just too much to talk about, really, isn't there?
There is. We've got lots of different topics planned, haven't we? So me and Jodie can talk. Cows come home. I keep using that phrase recently for some reason. It's probably totally the wrong phrase, but I'm sure it's till the cows come home. That's the saying, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the saying. I think you could just write it off as it's because you're French anyway. You can go, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm French. Yeah, I was actually thinking then, what's the flipping French saying for, I don't know, and it wouldn't come to me quick enough, but you've just done it, haven't you? Do it again.
Yeah. Je ne sais pas.
Je ne sais pas. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So yes, let's talk a little bit about International Women's Day then. It's come round very quick this year, hasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
I can't believe it's March.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, March already. Don't know where February's. And I know it's a short month anyway, but I do not know where February has gone. So, but the good thing is I'm loving the light nights.
It's so nice, isn't it? I actually, I had a day in work yesterday that was actually out on a client site. And even though I left early, it was light when I left and it was light when I came back. And as I was walking back to my car last night, I was like, oh, the birds are singing and everything. It was just like, I was like, over the moon.
I think I was like that yesterday. It's 4:30. I had to take a double take at my phone. I was like, is it really 4:30? Because it doesn't look like it outside. But yeah, it's been nice, hasn't it? Just puts you in a mood, in a good mood when you feel like spring is in the air.
Yeah, good things are a coming. And I guess that kind of sets the tone a little bit for this podcast episode too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So, unless you've been hiding under a rock somewhere, you'll obviously be aware that it's International Women's Day. And every year it kind of has a theme, doesn't it? And now, if you look all over social media, you'll quite easily see that the theme that's floating about this year is give to gain. And we are going to talk a little bit about give to gain. However, one thing that people might not really be aware of is that that's not actually the real theme for International Women's Day this year. I was gobsmacked to learn that internationalwomensday.com, which if you look at the branding on there and everything, is what is commonly seen for International Women's Day. It's not really the authentic International Women's Day. Yeah. It's actually owned by a marketing company. I think they're mostly bros. But yeah, as a marketing ploy for International Women's Day, and they're setting these themes that actually, you know what, if you go look at the United Nations website on a global scale for International Women's Day, then the theme it's different, but it does align because the theme this year, I'm just looking at my notes, is rights, justice, action.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so however, they're both great themes. So we're just going to talk about them both, aren't we?
I think so, yeah. I think we, like you said, we kind of know the one that it's a purple logo, isn't it? The branding and everything that we tend to follow. And that's the one that's got the give to gain theme. Still very valid. And that's why we're going to talk about it. But what you find is most people will be talking about that theme. And so we like to mix things up a little bit and do things differently. And Joe's done a bit of research and found out we've got a global theme as well. So it makes sense to dive into both those topics, I think, doesn't it?
Definitely, you know, and I don't know, I think maybe there's a little bit of me that really wants to get behind, you know, the formalised United Nations version of supporting women and girls.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, we'll do a bit of both anyway. But, you know, let's start off. Let's go with the give to gain thing initially.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 'cause actually, I think it's good to explore what it means because at first I was like, what? You're asking us to give more?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I felt like it was on the face of it. It was saying that actually, come on, women, you need to give more so that you can gain a bit more. And I was like, we give enough.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because they're just, it's 3 words, and it's interesting how different people interpret them. Because one of my things it's like I always say, I don't give to receive, you know, like presents and things like that. So it's like, well, that's kind of going against, you don't give someone something to gain something back. But when you dive into it a bit more and you look at what it's about, yeah, you realize it's not about asking women to do more. And I think it's important to say right from the beginning, everything we talk about on this podcast in terms of supporting, whether it's give to gain, whether it's rights, justice and action, it's not a women's issue, and it's not, you know, it's about women supporting women. This is about everybody supporting, you know, all humans. And it's not just about women doing the giving to gain. It's everybody being able to do that, isn't it? So
Yes, we'll add some words into that sentence. So it says, everybody gives for women to gain.
yes, yeah, I like that. Much better. Yeah,
Perhaps
not a short
a new third International Women's Day.
Yeah. So what does it kind of mean then? I think and even when I first started to look into it, can be easily think that it means about grand gestures or, you know, giving. A lot of people's minds might go to money and, oh, I've got to give some money or, you know, charitable work or something like that. But it's not all about grand gestures, is it? It's
No.
sometimes the little things and day to day.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, even more so about the
Yeah.
little things. Because actually, if we go on that kind of principle of look after the pennies and the pounds and look after themselves, it's the little things that add up to shift some of the big things,
Yeah.
you know, and it can seem just too far removed or something that you're not in control of to contribute to if you see it as something too big. Whereas we all make a small contribution to these things. That's ultimately how culture in an organisation or society starts to shift, isn't it?
It's the small steps, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and obviously, I think we'll inevitably do a bit of a mix of this, but I think coming back to the topic of our podcast being for leadership is naturally some of the topics and tips we're going to talk about. Well, what does that mean? What are those small gestures? Lend itself to leadership because that's what we do. But it's important to think about other things outside of work. But I think from a workplace perspective, what would you say some of the small day-to-day things we could be doing?
So I think a lot of them are about, you know, it might be as simple as you're in a meeting and somebody is constantly talking over you and everybody notices, but nobody does anything about it. So, you know, to give to gain in that scenario would be around, you know, maybe the woman that you see him being interrupted all the time, you can tell that she's deflated, she's struggling, she's almost at the point of giving up and thinking, what's the point of me even voicing my opinion here? That you might step in and be like, Emma's trying to make a point at the moment, you know, actually, can we just let her have the airtime that she deserves to make the point? You know, for me, that would be a contribution, something I could give that would mean that that person gained in that scenario and it helps, you know. In the grand scheme of International Women's Day, fundamentally, it's a quest for equity, isn't it, that will ultimately lead to equality. So for me, that would be an act that would help to level the playing field for people to have the same kind of opportunity and an equitable move. That'd be one example.
Yeah, and that's so important because, I don't know about you, I've definitely been in meetings before where you kind of like, every time there's a little bit of airspace, you feel like you're jumping in and and then someone else ends up talking. And yeah, I think just somebody noticing that, and that's about, being in a meeting, looking around the room and noticing what's going on and supporting each other in that way. Absolutely. I think when people have done that for me in the past, I've thanked them for that because there's nothing worse than feeling like your voice isn't heard in that room, especially if you look around that room and maybe you're the only female in it. I think it's important that you've got that back in there. So yeah, definitely, that's a really good starting point, I think. And talking about meetings as well, I think from a visibility point of view, if you know that somebody is trying to get in certain rooms, i.e. in meetings, actually say, why don't, especially if you're that person's line manager, why don't you come in the next meeting with me?
Yeah.
It just helps to give that person, I'm going to say that word again, we keep saying on the podcast, to expose ourselves in those
You know
rooms.
what? I said that line yesterday when I was delivering some training and everyone laughed. And I was
Yeah,
like, not like that, not like that.
it's common theme. I thought you were going to say nobody laughed and just you, then that would have been a worry.
That's what normally happens, but no.
So, yeah, sorry, it's just reminded me
Thrown you
of,
now. I've thrown you.
because, and I'm going to have to mention it now because otherwise it'll be over mad, but it's just reminded me years ago, one of my colleagues, she was stood up in a training room, she was talking about, I can't remember what it was now, it was something really serious, like to the delegates that all sat around and, nodding away. And she said, and I don't even know what context it was now, but she said, and she actually went with the hands, if you're watching on video, you'll see with the hands, she went, it's not the size of it that matters, it's what you do with it that counts. And she carried on. She didn't realize what she said, but the whole room was laughing. And then she stopped and had to ask, but she didn't
Like
realize
what you're
that.
laughing at. She was totally innocent in this.
Yeah. Sorry, I just totally off piece there. What you've just reminded me of
I
that
do
one.
it
And that was
all the
years ago.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could win innuendo bingo without even putting any effort in a lot of the time. I'm forever sticking
Yeah.
me putting it in my mouth like that.
Well, yeah. So, Yaz, if you're listening,
That
hopefully
was
you remember that story. So, yes, that visibility, just, helping that person to get a look in that room and actually give them the opportunity to show what they can do, show their skills, their expertise, that particularly when, there's this hybrid way of working in a lot of organizations now, and visibility is harder. Actually, if you're in the office, you're going into an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting, inviting other people along that might not normally go. I think that's a good one as well.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And the thing that makes me think on top of that is then also, recommending someone when they're not in the room. Maybe it's a room you can't take somebody into, or, whatever the case may be. I'm just thinking back to a couple of posts I did the week before last, I think, around sponsorship,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And, that's about bringing people into rooms, and advocating for them by talking about them and saying, hey, well, you want to see what this person's doing and what that person's doing. So talking about great women
Yeah.
in rooms that they're not in yet can really help to start to increase some of their visibility. So,
Yeah.
these these are everyday things, aren't they, that
Yeah.
anybody can do, whether you're a woman advocating for another woman, you're a male ally, doing that, whoever, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's not about big grand gestures or doing that performative allyship.
Yeah.
It's in the small, consistent things that
Mm.
that we can all do every day,
Yeah.
I think.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's important as well. I think just thinking about some of the topics we've already covered on the podcast as well, like confidence and imposter syndrome. I think supporting people with the fact that they might be feeling that they're not good enough, and
Yeah.
am I doing a good enough job? So I think that positive feedback, catch people out doing things well and tell them that. I mean, how often do we maybe think that, or think, oh, I'm glad, that person in my team supported me there with that, or that person did a really good job on that project. And we might think it, but do we actually voice it? Do we say it? People think about the word feedback so negatively these days. They think, and I say there's never ever negative feedback. There's either positive feedback or areas for development. But how often do we take that time to give that positive feedback? And even in our personal lives, and I think this is why a lot of us feel awkward when somebody does give us a compliment and we kind of go, oh, well, this old thing, it's only from Georgia Asda, or I've had it in the loft for years, or whatever it is, that you downplay things when we've got imposter syndrome, because we're not used to that all the time and those compliments. And, how often you're having a chat with somebody, you've noticed they've had the haircut and you think, oh, the hair looks nice, but you're so deep in conversation about something else, you don't actually say it.
Yeah.
And when you do say, though, again, it comes back to those little things that just gives that person a boost of confidence as they walk off. So it doesn't always have to be positive feedback about a piece of work. It can just be something that you've noticed about a personality or their trait, or, even, if somebody says to me, oh, I love that dress. I don't know about you, but I walk off with a little bit of a
You've got an
uh,
extra
kick in my stomach.
inch on you, haven't you?
Exactly,
There
yeah.
you go. There's another innuendo.
Yeah. And if I'm on my way to another meeting, I'm naturally going to walk in there feeling more confident because I've just had a nice little compliment. But it's got to be genuine. I will add to that.
Yeah. And I think, actually on the topic of feedback, like you say, is a great way to give to gain. Yeah, because all feedback should be constructive. That means it should build somebody up, even if you're suggesting to them to do something a little bit differently. But for me, that is about specificity. So instead of just going, oh, you look great today, or oh, you did a brilliant job in that meeting, it's
Yeah.
being able to say, be really specific about that, to say, the reason I thought you were excellent in this morning's meeting was because you challenged the thinking in a way that, didn't cause any conflict. And actually, people leaned into that instead of leaning out. And we
Yeah.
came up with so many more great ideas. So keep doing that, because that's
Yeah.
bloody brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And the way that you've just worded that then aligns to a little formula I use called E2C2.
E2C2. Sounds like
Okay.
it's my Star Wars,
Yes. I don't even watch Star, or never
No, I
watched
haven't.
it.
Not since I was a kid, anyway.
Yeah. But so the two E's stand for evidence and effect. So you can use this feedback model for giving positive feedback and areas for development. But the first E stands for evidence. So like what you said, be specific, give examples of what you've seen, whether it's something that's good or something that can improve in. Then the second E is the effect. So it could be the effect, the consequence, the result of. So like you said, the result of that was that people kind of leaned back and, listened and X, Y, Z. So whatever the result or consequence effect was from it. And then the first C is change. So you would use this more so if you're giving feedback because you're looking for some change, but you'd be solution focused with it. So you might be, so I'd like to talk about some ways you can maybe be more vocal in meetings going forward. What are your thoughts and ideas? And you ask them. So it turns more into a coaching conversation rather than I'm going to tell you what to do. And then the second C is continue. So that, like you just said, so keep up the good work, or, I want you to continue to do more of that because that was really good.
I think that's so important, because I love that model, by the way. There's a phrase I use: successful people are the ones who figure out what works and repeatedly do it. And so some people say, why are you telling someone to continue doing something that, yeah, well, actually, that reinforces the behavior and helps them to continually do it. Therefore, it makes them more successful. We just assume that, well, if they've done it once, they'll recognize that and do it again. But we don't.
Yeah.
We just waft back off into life and carry on without even acknowledging that, or reflecting on the fact that, what was it that made that meeting go well? It was because I challenged them in a certain way without being aggressive or, being too spiky or direct. It was that got me the good result. I know, I'll do that. We don't do that thinking,
No.
That's why I
No.
think it's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't. And we're more often walk away thinking about the things that we think we didn't do so well.
Yeah,
And there's nothing like someone else pointing out something that, like you said, it reinforces, gives you that boost of confidence.
definitely.
Remove sometimes that little bit of a niggle that we might have thinking, oh, is there a better way? Could I have done it differently?
Yeah.
I think also if it's a natural strength, we don't tend to see our natural strengths as strengths because it's something that does come naturally to
Like, it's
you.
just who I am.
But then when someone goes, well, no, not everybody's good at that, then you go, right, yeah, didn't realise. So,
Definitely.
yeah,
So yeah, whether it is backing someone in a meeting, whether it's bringing someone into a room or advocating for someone in a room, whether it's giving someone some great quality feedback for
Yeah.
whatever reason, maybe even it's just about giving someone some time.
yeah.
Everyone's flipping time poor these days. No one's got time for anything or anybody, have they?
Yeah.
So to be able to give somebody a little bit of your undivided attention, I
Yeah.
think it's like such a gift these days for
Mm.
people to feel like someone actually listens to them, not to fix them, not to give them a solution, not to give them an answer, not to give them some advice, just to
Mm.
go, I see you, I hear you, I validate you, I see where you're at. That I think that is like super duper gift. So if you can give nothing else, can you give
Yeah.
someone a little bit of your time?
Yeah, that is so important.
Yeah.
And even whether that time is spent listening, it's just not something. We're just so busy, aren't we? Back to back meetings and
Well, not us, because
Yeah.
remember, we set an objective to not be busy.
Yeah, that's it. So when I say we, I mean the royal we. We're just so, society just is what's the next, what onto the next thing.
Yeah.
And so you really value that time when somebody does take that time out to spend with, and it could just be, grabbing somebody and going having a coffee in the canteen at work, or even to a coffee shop nearby or something, and just giving them that time to chat. I think so many managers as well shy away from the career conversation chat. If they've got somebody amazing in their team, it's almost like that they're guilty sometimes of going, well, I don't want them to move on. I don't want them to be promoted because what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely not, you need to not look at it like that. I used to really pride myself on if I had a high turnover in my team, but it meant that it was because so many people were being promoted and bettering themselves, whether it was in or outside of the company, that means I'm doing a great job in developing people. And so, it's about sometimes having that. It's not necessarily a one-to-one where we go, let's look at your objectives, let's look at your to-do list or your project updates. It's maybe a separate conversation where you go, where do you want to take your career next, and how can I help you to do that? So
Totally. It's making me think, actually, when you mention the career conversation, we love a good story on the podcast, don't we? And it's brought to mind a personal story for me, because I was thinking, when have I ever been on the receiving end of give to gain? Have I? I was racking my brains a bit, but now you're talking about the career conversation, a light bulb proper went off for me. I was only about 18 and I was working in a call centre, answering calls. But I had a brilliant team leader at the time. I'll do a little shout out for her. I'm not sure whether she'll be listening just yet, but I'm hoping to get in front of her at some point. We're still early on in the podcast days, but her name was Jo Benson.
okay, yeah,
And, we got on really, really well. But I was 18. I was working just for my bare money of a weekend, if I was honest. I was still studying at college a bit. And the training team didn't have anybody to run the next induction group. And she said to me, put yourself forward for that. You'd be dead good at that. And I was like, oh, give over. No chance. As if I'd be good at that. I'm not doing that. She was like, come on, you'd be brilliant. And I was like, no. Anyway, she did it behind me back. Yeah. She was like, come, and then she was like, right, you've got an interview, get in there. So at the time, the job was a stand-in trainer.
right, standing.
Anyway, they wanted a couple of them actually, but I actually got given a proper, not a standing job. I got given a substantive role.
Right.
And I pooed my pants. I was like, oh shit, I've got a proper job. And that's what got me into my career in learning.
Right.
But the fact that she believed in me, she saw an opportunity that she knew I'd be good for. Obviously she knew, right? Because here I am. However, how old am I now? Just coming up for 47. So what's that? That's nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, that's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, let's edit that bit out. No, just
let's move on.
Nearly 30 years ago, right? But yeah, for me, that is a good give to gain story because she saw me before I saw myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that is a brilliant point, you know, and that really
Yeah.
did change my complete trajectory. Didn't know
Yeah.
it at the time, but it did. So I think the ripple effect of some of these
Uh,
small
yeah.
gestures can end up being huge, can't they?
Yeah.
It's about someone's confidence grows, you know.
Mm.
If confidence grows, then, you know, the way they lead changes, they get better
Yeah.
outcomes,
Yeah.
careers develop, culture even changes, doesn't it? The more
Mm.
we do it, it's big, the
Yeah.
ripple, I guess.
It is. It is, and it's just making me think of different scenarios from, you know, people that have supported me as well. And I kind of similar way that I got into training really, because I actually went to, it was when I was working at Phones for You. I went to a management training day with someone called Wayne Prescott. Hi Wayne, if you're listening.
We're dropping all the names
I
today,
know.
aren't we?
He looked like he was at the front and he looked like he was having a really good time. He was enjoying delivering the training. And it was the first time that I sat there and thought, "Do you know, I think I'd like to do this." And I started it. I didn't really say anything to Wayne at the time, but I did the workshop and then started talking to my manager about it after the session. And what came then over the next few months is that they actually supported me in going and observing some of the other training sessions that were happening. And then a role came up, and mine, what did you say yours was called? Outstanding.
I've been trainer.
Mine was maternity leaves cover. So it was like a secondment.
Yeah.
Well, it was a secondment in a way that they basically said, but we are backfilling your role. So
You couldn't
it
go
doesn't
back.
work. I couldn't go back. So yeah, covered a mat leave role. And again, they gave me that opportunity to go and learn about what the role entailed first. Then an interview came up and they were like, right, before they even advertised it, they came to me and said, this role, mat leave role's coming up.
Yeah.
So applied for that. So they gave me that opportunity to cover the mat leave, which I suppose was a bit of a trial period for them. And I got, a permanent role at the end of it,
Yeah.
and then progressed in the company to do other roles with it. But that was my first trainer role. And like you said, in terms of people supporting and backing me, and my manager could have maybe not suggested that I go and observe training sessions, because she obviously lost me from her team. And then just one more that's sticking out, and it's a very quick one really. I had a director at Phones for You at one point that I was at a bit of a crossroads with where I was going to go next in my role.
Yeah.
And we were just having a chat. It was an evening after we were at some sort of event. There was a lot of boozy events at Phones for You. And I don't know why I went to the microphone and go, boozy. A lot of boozy events. And it was one of them. And it was a, end of the night type thing. And I can remember him just saying to me, "What do you want? Do you want? Tell me what you want."
Yeah.
And then what I just gave him was a series of things that I didn't want, which I now talk about a lot, is that women naturally do that. But at the time,
There's a chapter in my book about that.
And he said to me, all I've just heard from you in the last 5 minutes is what you don't want, but you still haven't told me what you do want. But even just that question, I was like, I don't even know how to answer that. What do I want? And, there's a bit of story after that in terms of me going and then to a different role and what have you, and he supported me within that. But like you said, when you really start to think about it, and there are people that along the way, people giving you that chance and giving you that opportunity, just bit by bit grows your confidence, doesn't it? And without other people supporting you, you can't do it alone, can you? You need that support.
Yeah, that's true.
And look how many people, because of that, how many people have gained from what we deliver, from either coaching them, training them, again, coming back to that ripple effect. So,
it's been massive, hasn't it? It's definitely been massive.
Yeah.
But, let's move on a bit then from give to gain. Let's talk about the UN's theme. What did I say it was now? Rights, justice, action.
Yes.
Oh, it's powerful, that, isn't it? It's got some definitely. But yeah, I was a bit like, oh, I don't want to get all heavy with that one. And you could go very kind of global with it. But, if we do try and bring it to life a bit, I guess what I love about it, that it is about action. Very often,
I go straight to the word action when I read them.
But I think because particularly International Women's Day, but many, ironically, awareness days are about awareness, which is fab. But ultimately, awareness without action doesn't really have as much.
Right.
Yeah. So the fact that it's got the word action in it feels big for me, because it is about what actually does need to change. And I think what stands out to me right now, I am going to sound a bit of a negative Nelly just for a minute, and then I promise I'll be positive again. Well, I feel like the world's going backwards for women at the moment. I feel like pre-COVID, we were making quite a bit of headway in terms of gender parity and, and equity starting to happen. I don't know if it was because of COVID or something else or a mixture of a whole bunch of things, probably yes. But I feel like we're going backwards, particularly in terms of rights and justice for women. I don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And only this week I've, posted something on my Instagram that I was just like, it just made my blood boil. And, it's not that I want to brush it under the carpet, but I almost couldn't sit with it for too long a period of time. Felt the need that I wanted to share it, but I was like, if I let myself get consumed by even just this one thing, like, I've got to protect my mental health and sanity. But and the story that I read was about how the Taliban have changed some of their rights for women from a justice perspective with domestic abuse. Basically saying that unless broken bones are involved, then they don't they don't see it as domestic abuse. And I was just like, I even feel like I can't breathe now just talking about it again, because I'm just like, are we really in 2026? And we're seeing things like this that is acceptable in some countries. It's just crazy. It's easy to think sometimes, oh, well, that's really bad and that's happening in a different country. But no, it's globally we need to be looking after each other. And one of the main things I was just going to mention on that as well is that is looking at physical abuse, which, is more than just broken bones, but also where's the thought about the psychological abuse on top of that as well? It's just, and where's that going to lead to things? If that they're things that are changing now, it's like you said, does it feel like it's getting worse rather than it getting better?
Yeah, in a similar vein, I saw something about reducing the age of marrying little girls off to the age of 9.
This just doesn't bear
That
thinking
doesn't
about.
meet rights, justice, action, does it? But I know what you're saying. When it comes to action, I feel like what on earth can I do?
Yeah.
Try and change that. So, and it just becomes overwhelming, all consuming. It makes you panic and just almost be like, what's the point? I need to get off this planet. Stop, press stop. I want to get off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure where I'd get off to, but it feels like, oh, there's nowhere to go
Yeah.
to escape some of this. And even at a more local level, sorry, I said I wouldn't be negative for long, but just this one last thing and then I'll move on, I promise, is, I've even listened to a number of podcast episodes from some really big podcasters lately that have been kind of creating at least a platform, if not endorsing some of these attitudes around, women are not having as many babies, they're choosing not to reproduce and, therefore we're going to tax these women more to encourage them to have more children, and that men are like thinking that it's their right and their entitlement to have a woman and to be able to have a family. And I'm just like, what? What even is this? And this is in westernized world.
Yeah.
Never mind. It's
Yeah.
very worrying. It's very, very worrying.
It is, and I'm always speechless with it because but this is the thing. Then you've got rights, justice, and the word awareness. It's an awareness day, but where does that action come from? And it's you feel a little bit helpless. I mean, we've just been talking about some of the things you can do in the workplace. Great, on the face of it, to support leadership and women at work. But when we start to talk about some of these other fundamental human rights and issues, you do feel a little bit helpless on, what's the answer? But that's got to come from the people that are running these countries, and somebody's got to step in and do something about it and make these changes, because
I
like
think,
I said,
there's one phrase that comes to mind to kind of help kind of elevate this into a positive space. The action space is, let me just see if I can remember this right. if you think you're too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito. Is that right?
Along them lines, yeah. It's from that, yeah. And a great Anita Roddick quote. It's one of my favourite quotes. Yeah, it's something like, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try spending the night in a room or you've never spent the night in a room with a
With a
mosquito.
mosquito.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's true.
that's the thing to remember is that, because back to what we said earlier, everybody playing a small part in their own circle of influence ultimately adds up.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ripple effect does become bigger. So it's a case of, remember that. Don't give up because that feels too far away from us and think we're doomed. It's actually to think, you know what, actively, me personally, I'm just going to focus on the little things that I can do. And I'm going to encourage the women, the men, my family members, my friends, my work colleagues, my clients, whoever it may be, to do the same.
Yeah.
And it's like, did you ever watch that Dancing Man in a Field video on YouTube? How to create a leadership movement?
Yes, I know what you mean.
Right, so I'm going to have to remember to put a link to that in the show notes now, aren't I? But, it's that lone nut dancing at a rave with his t-shirt off and everyone's just looking at him. And then actually one person's like, I can't bear to leave him looking like a div on his own. So I'm going to go and join him. And then a third person joins. And then as soon as the third person's in, everyone's like, yay! To the point where if you're not joining in, now you look the weirdo.
Yeah.
Kind of how to create a movement. And it's believing in that principle, I think, that really matters here, isn't it?
It is, and we've already talked about ripple effects, haven't we? I suppose it goes back to that. But I like that. It's like the dance floor at a wedding, isn't it? And it takes that first person to go. And
actually, the more ridiculous you look, the better. Because if you dance too well, people don't want to come and join you because they're like, oh, can't do it as good as that. So it's all right to be shit, isn't it? But just do something.
Do it. Yeah. I've got a friend that's always the first one on. That's Lindsay.
Yeah.
And she's definitely always the first one on the dance floor. In fact, last time we went out, she was doing a Mexican wave, getting everybody around the room to do the Mexican wave. So yeah, and
well,
it's
maybe we need to get Lindsay a job in the UN.
Yeah, start a Mexican wave.
In the UN. So I know we talked about the things that we could do from a give to gain perspective. Do we think there's anything different from a rights justice action, or is it actually about the same stuff?
I feel like we talked about a lot about action when we were talking about give to gain, didn't we? So that kind of the gain part. The giving part, I suppose, is the action.
Yes.
I suppose the rights and the justice part probably doesn't link in as much, but it is about, I suppose it's giving people having the right to speak up in a room, even if you want to look at it as small as that.
Yeah, I think it's got quite a strong, because I was thinking then, I was on the same line as you. I was like, can we do anything from a rights and a justice perspective? But then I thought, you know what, maybe we actually can. Maybe this is about, I think it's massively about speaking up when you see things that are unequal or unfair. If we go back to the one about someone being spoken over in a meeting, from a justice and a equal rights perspective, it'd be about saying, I think Emma was speaking there. Can we just come back to a point and let her have the airtime she deserves? Or, if it was about giving credit for ideas, actually that was Jodie's idea from earlier. Thank you, Jodie. Let's make sure she gets the credit for what she contributed. Or maybe even noticing if somebody isn't speaking, you can't get a word in edgeways, is to say, Emma, you look like you're wanting to speak there. Let me just invite you in. What's on your mind? So I think, again, it's just back to those small things, but they still link to kind of rights, justice, action. I think the justice piece is probably if you think of micro affirmations, microaggressions, that type of thing, it's remembering to pick up on some of those and help people notice when they don't mean to do things like that, but they do. Saying, I'm sure that wasn't what you meant by that. I like the term, let's call it in rather than call it out. I hate that phrase, I'm going to call him out on that. Or I called such a body out in the meeting on that. I'm like, do you know what? Call out positive behaviour when somebody's really inclusive. and say, do you know what? Thank you. Everybody's been really inclusive today. You've taken the time to be considerate of people who, you know, are maybe quieter in this group. But when it's somebody who's maybe being non-inclusive, is that the right phrase? Yeah.
Yeah.
I say call that in. And what I mean by that is you do that much more gently with curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to go, you can't say that to her. That's not allowed. That's unacceptable. More
Yeah.
just to like, did you realise what you said there? You know,
Yeah.
maybe a bit quieter and to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. It's about, they're called unconscious bias, or it's called unconscious bias for a reason because we're not aware of it. And it's about calling in people around that unconscious bias. And so you're kind of educating people around it, aren't you? So,
Yeah. And I think they're the things that perfectly line up to right justice action. It's about leading inclusively.
yeah.
There you go. There's a whole other podcast episode on how
Yeah.
to lead inclusively, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What are you doing? Anything nice to celebrate International Women's Day? I've got a couple of speaking gigs for a number of lovely organisations, so I'll be enjoying them.
Yeah. I've actually got afternoon tea with my friends.
Yeah,
Feels like a girly thing to do, doesn't it?
definitely.
But yeah, not got any events lined up or anything. It's just taking it easy. And I've also got I'll probably do something with my women's walking group. So, when we talk about giving to gain, something over the last 12 months that, we talk about giving time is that, I run I think I've said it before on one of the podcasts, is that I've got a local walking group where I live called Cheshire Ladies Walking Group. Very original, I know.
Oh, I think it sounds. I think it sounds quite. It sounds a bit posh. But
Check
you
it
don't
out.
have to be posh to be in it, do you?
No, you don't. And yeah, there's over 2,000 women in a Facebook group who, are all invited to local regular walks. So I don't know how many. I haven't counted actually how many walks we've had in a full year, but we have those regular walks, and we've had up to 50 women turn up for them, and so many thank me for creating a safe space.
Yeah.
Because I've only actually realised since I've had the walking group how many women actually feel unsafe going out for a walk by themselves. So I'll probably put on a walk and celebrate somehow in some way that it's International Women's Day. And then I think in terms of what else we can, so that's how we're celebrated, but how can we give to gain, Joe? Have we got some things that we can do?
You know what? You've put me on the spot. Actually, yeah, I mean, I know at the beginning of this podcast I said this isn't about women giving more, but actually I do think if you are a woman who is privileged enough to have gotten yourself into it, whether it's through sheer hard work and grit or pure luck, doesn't really matter. But if you are in a position where you can give back to other women, then I think that's a lovely thing to do. And I feel like I probably am in a position where I could do that. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm going to give away some of my coaching in a few different ways to women who otherwise wouldn't either be able to access that from an affordability perspective or they wouldn't get a look in from an opportunity perspective. So I'm going to run a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah. Oh, I love giveaway.
Period. To win some one-to-one executive coaching sessions with me. I'm also going to give away some places on my signature feminine leadership program, which is called Luminology. It's a 12-week program. And I'm also going to give away some places in my exec coaching on tap support facility, which is like permanent access to me on WhatsApp. When you're stuck with a leadership challenge, you can WhatsApp me. It's private, and you're not in a group, and I'll answer you and give you some coaching questions to get you thinking differently. But if you also need some ideas and suggestions to help you in that moment. So that's going to be my contribution, my give for other people
That
to gain.
sounds fabulous. So, and I'm sure we're going to put some links, are we, to
Do that in the show notes.
that giveaway? Yeah, brilliant. No, that sounds amazing. I think there's something obviously we've discussed prior to this podcast, and I've just got a little bit of story before this kind of where this has come from. But I can't believe it was 2 years ago now. But 2 years ago,
Yeah.
I had somebody in one of my leadership programs who delivered a presentation at the end of her program. And we'd had a little bit of a journey throughout the program where she'd had a little bit of a wobble, should we say, around confidence and, the label imposter syndrome that we've talked about before. And her presentation was brilliant. She was nervous as anything, but she didn't come across like that, and she did really well. And I was so taken back by her presentation that immediately after we had a break, and I said to her, look, I'm doing a talk at Womanifest in July. This was like probably towards the beginning of the year, so I gave her plenty of notice. Yeah. But I said, I'm doing a talk about embracing imposter syndrome at Womanifest. And she lives in Oxford, so it's quite a way for her to come. I said, I know it's far away. I said, I'm just putting it out there. I'd love for you to come and co-deliver it with me. And I talk about my tools and tips, and you tell your story like you just told in your presentation. And she was just like, she'd just come out of the presentation, so she was just reeling from that. And then I kind of offered her that on top. And Emma Farrell, if you're listening, obviously you know who you are. And she came and co-delivered it. And she was nervous and, but she did it. And she had so much good feedback. Loads of people chatting to her at the end of the talk. And she still talks about it now in terms of how that was a real turning point for her confidence.
Oh, what a lovely story.
Yeah. And so in that moment, I really felt like I'd, give for other people, even just listen to that talk to gain.
Yeah.
To listen to her story who resonated with it. So for this same kind of vein, we wanted to give someone the opportunity to tell a story that they might have, and also the opportunity to gain some visibility. And so although this podcast is me and Jodes, we wanted to, as a special treat, invite a guest on. So I suppose this is a giveaway.
Yeah.
Because what we want to do is invite somebody, and we haven't set a date yet, but we'll do it virtually like we're doing now. Yeah, we can be flexible with dates. And what we'd like to do is invite someone onto the podcast to come and do a recording with us. Tell your story. It could be about you as a woman in leadership, like some of the stories that we tell. So what we'll do is we'll put an application form together and put the link in, and then we'll choose somebody, and we'll announce it on our socials, and you can come and join us for a recording of a podcast.
Special guest. So yeah. We've got a story you want to tell, or a message that you want to get out into the world, or to raise awareness on a particular topic or subject, yes, then we'd love to hear from you, wouldn't we? So that we can give you the platform to share that story or raise that awareness.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Look forward to that.
Would it be lovely to see kind of what things come back in?
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I guess let's wish everybody a very happy and prosperous International Women's Day. I think a powerful kind of conclusion to this is, you know what, we don't have to fix everything. I know sometimes as women, we're like, oh, it's all on me, I need to fix everything. But I would say we do have to do something. But those somethings can be quite small, because they add up when we all do small things. Small things make big differences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'd love to know what you gained this International Women's Day, or if you were in a position to give, what did you give to?
Yeah, we'd love to see that in the comments, wouldn't we? Yeah. So, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. As Jo said, happy International Women's Day. And so, as always, if you're watching on YouTube, if you haven't already, please do subscribe so you get all the notifications for our new podcast drop. If you are listening on Apple, Spotify, I can't even speak now. Spotify, to Apple, Spotify, or Amazon Music, give us a follow. And again, let us know if you're enjoying the podcast and any other topics that you'd like to see. And finally, you'll see the link for buying us a coffee. So again, if you want to click on that and treat us to a coffee, we'd much appreciate it.
A wrong flipping mug today, but it matches my shirt.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I'll let you off.
All right. Nice to see everybody, and we'll see you next episode. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Lipstick, Laughs and Leadership.
If something in today's conversation resonated, take a moment to sit with it, or share this episode with someone who might need to hear it too.
You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and that really helps more women find these conversations.
We're glad you spent this time with us, and we hope you're leaving feeling a little more grounded, a little more confident, and a little less alone.
So we'll meet you back on the sofa next time.